This is how this 13-year-old boy survived a serial killer so scary they called him the Bone Breaker. This is truly one of the most wild true crime cases I've ever heard of. You guys are going to be shocked when you hear the details in this case. Thad Phillips was 13 years old when him and his family moved to this super teeny tiny small town. We're talking population like 11,000 people. It was 2 weeks after the move and Thad fell asleep on the couch in the living room after an evening of watching TV with his family, when somebody picked Thad up off the couch and started carrying him. Thad is like half asleep and he assumes that it's his father picking him up and carrying him to bed. And I know that we all definitely remember our parents carrying us to bed after we've fallen asleep on the couch or in the car. But when Thad actually starts to like fully wake up, he realizes that it's not his father carrying him. And it's actually another teenage boy a couple years older than him, 17-year-old Joe Clark. So I really want you guys to picture this. 13-year-old Thad was just sleeping in his living room and now he's standing outside of his neighbor's house in the middle of the night because he was carried out by this 17-year-old boy that he had never met before. 17-year-old Joe is super friendly. He doesn't even acknowledge this super awkward and weird situation that he's just created. He just starts talking to 13-year-old Thad like they're two homies, even though they've never met before. And he's just abducted him out of his house. But Joe is super friendly. He starts talking cars with Thad and then invites Thad back to his place, which is right down the street, because he says he's about to throw a party. And Thad did follow Joe back to his house because he was disoriented and groggy and confused and honestly probably thought that he was like dreaming or something. He had no idea the nightmare that he was about to face. Once inside of Joe's home, Joe attacked Thad, grabbed him by the ankle, and began to twist his foot until the bones in his leg began to break. Joe told Thad that he liked breaking bones. He really loved the sound of it. And this torture of Joe breaking Thad's bones would last for hours at a time. And then in between these attacks, Joe would talk to Thad like they were friends and like literally nothing was wrong. And because Thad thought it would help him survive longer, he would play along and talk to Joe like nothing was wrong. The two would watch movies together. They would talk about cars, girls, friends, family. And then without any warning, Joe would just go back to breaking Thad's bones some more. Joe also made the shocking confession that this was not the first time that he had done this before, and he had actually already unalived 2 other boys previously. And this confession from Joe did line up with an unsolved case from the year prior from the same small town. 14-year-old Chris Steiner vanished from his bedroom in the middle of the night, and 5 days later his body was found with both of his legs broken. So not only was Joe pretending to be Thad's friend in between these attacks where he was breaking his bones, but he also would try to provide medical care in between attacks as well to all of his broken bones. He would wrap thick socks around his broken bones to kind of create a cast, and also make Thad wear leg braces just for the cycle of torture to continue a couple hours later. This entire ordeal lasted over 43 hours for Thad. After about 43 hours of breaking Thad's bones, Joe actually left his house to attend a party with his girlfriend and locked Thad in a closet while he was gone. 13-year-old Thad says that he knew he was close to dying, like he could feel it in his body. So somehow he was able to find the strength to bust down this closet door and throw himself down the stairs so he could get to the phone and call 911. The responding officer to Thad's 911 call at first actually thought it could have been a prank, but thankfully they still showed up and saved 13-year-old Thad. And the paramedics that treated Thad actually did confirm that he only had about an hour or 2 left to live if he hadn't gotten to the phone. Nearly every single bone in Thad's body was broken. But he did survive and made almost a full recovery. He still kind of has a limp, and he was able to testify against Joe Clark for not only his case, but the death of Chris Steiner as well. But you guys are not going to believe this. Shortly before Joe's trial was supposed to start for the death of Chris Steiner, Thad was actually shot twice by a 15-year-old friend of Joe's to keep him from testifying. But Thad Phillips survived that as well because he is a total badass, went on to testify against Joe, who was sentenced to life in prison plus 100 years. Today, Thad Phillips is a father, he's a survivor, and I have total 100% respect for him. Of course, over the years, he had to have multiple surgeries, which is extremely expensive for the broken bones and the gunshot wounds that he endured. So I did include a GoFundMe if you guys can check that out. If not, just sharing this video to get it out to more people will be so much help. Thank you guys so much for listening to Thad Phillips and Chris Steiner's stories. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow. This is everything we know so far about the P. Diddy case and the allegations against him explained in less than 7 minutes. So it turns out that the red flags revolving Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy Puff Daddy Puffy, have been prevalent since the start of his career. So it's shocking that he was able to get away with everything for so long. So Puffy actually started working in the music industry at a very young age and had his own record label, Bad Boy Records, by the age of 24. Diddy's label, Bad Boy Records, and a West Coast label called Death Row Records were rivals during the 90s East Coast West Coast hip-hop rivalry, and what started out as maybe just friendly competition quickly turned deadly, and multiple people that were in the middle of it ended up being murdered, including Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls, and both of their deaths Diddy has been rumored to be in the center of since the late 90s. During Diddy's entire career, he's been sued and arrested for multiple violent crimes and has never been held responsible. He either was acquitted or the charges were dropped or he was able to pay people off. In one of these incidents, 3 people were shot in a crowded nightclub, and P. Diddy and his then girlfriend J-Lo were both arrested for it, but neither of them ended up serving any time. Since everything has come out, people have really been side-eyeing J-Lo and also anyone that used to hang out with P. Diddy and go to his parties. I honestly would not be surprised if P. Diddy is offered a plea deal and half of Hollywood end up getting arrested. When Diddy was 38 years old, he signed a 19-year-old artist named Cassie Ventura to his record label Bad Boy Records, and he was obsessed with her from the beginning. Remember, he's 38 and she's only 19 years old, and he would not take no for an answer. The two of them did date for about a decade, but I would not say that this relationship was consensual. This was definitely a forced relationship. He was able to pretty much dangle her career and all of her dreams in her face if she would not comply and obey him. Diddy would also force Cassie to take substances against her will and would often SA her. He would often also force her to take these substances and then sleep with other random men while he either watched or recorded them. These are what Diddy called freak-offs, and these would often last several days, and afterwards Cassie would need to be hooked up to IV liquids because she was so dehydrated. Just think about it. And we ended up finding out later on that Cassie was unfortunately not the only victim of these freak-offs. Cassie was also not allowed to work on her music, which was her passion, unless she participated in these freak-offs. Cassie was often also brutally beaten by P. Diddy if she would not comply, and in 2016, Diddy attacked Cassie in a hotel and then paid the hotel staff for the surveillance footage, which has now been leaked online. And in 2018, Cassie did luckily escape Diddy's abuse. And then in 2022, the state of New York passed the Adult Survivors Act, which gave victims a 1-year window to hold their abusers accountable, even if the statute of limitations had already passed. And this was the same act that found presidential candidate Donald Trump liable in an essay that he committed in 1996. So in November of 2023, under this act, Cassie filed a lawsuit against Diddy, and this would be the beginning of the end. In this lawsuit, Cassie accused Diddy of physical and psychological abuse as well as SA. Also that he used to force her to take substances against her will and then force her to engage in SA acts with other random men. Also accused Diddy of trying to kill multiple people, including an incident where Diddy held a woman by her ankles off a 24-story building. Following Cassie's lawsuit, 3 more victims of Diddy ended up filing their own lawsuits against Diddy, and these were underage people accusing him of SAing them and drugging them. And then, like I'm sure all of you guys know, in March of 2024, Homeland Security got a warrant to raid Diddy's homes in Miami and LA in an SA trafficking investigation. They ended up finding and taking with them a lot of evidence. This was technology, this was recordings, and also infamously, they found over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, as well as a bunch of adult toys. Extremely recently, on September 16th, 2024, P. Diddy was arrested in New York on charges of SA trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, plus some other charges. He has pled not guilty. He seems very confident that he will be found not guilty. So far, his bail has been denied, and the prosecution is very confident that they have plenty of evidence against him to convict him. If P. Diddy is found guilty, he is facing life in prison with a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison. Then since then, over 120 victims, both male and female, have come out with their own accusations against P. Diddy, 25 of which were only minors, with the youngest being 9 years old. So this was actually really hard to research, which is why it's taking me so long to make this video. I feel like things are coming out every other day. There's also been a lot of rumors, but I do want to address 2 of those rumors. So we all know who Usher is. Turns out when Usher was only 13 years old, Diddy, who was an adult at the time, had legal guardianship over 13-year-old Usher, and there has been rumors that Diddy had SA'd Usher when he was a child, literally 4 years. Also, when Justin Bieber was 15 years old, he used to hang out with P. Diddy. Allegedly, he would go to parties with P. Diddy when he was only a minor, spend days on days with him at a time. I've seen a concerning amount of people on social media say that Justin Bieber needs to come out and say if anything happened with him and P. Diddy. I hope I don't see any of those comments on this video. Victims never owe you a statement. Justin Bieber wants to come out and say something one day. That's completely up to him. The man has a baby on the way also, so please just leave him alone. Don't leave any of those comments here. I just wanted to address that because I've been seeing a concerning amount of people say that Justin Bieber needs to make a statement. That's all I have for right now. I'm really interested to get you guys' take on this. How deep do you think this is? Also, how many people you think are involved in this that are like A-list celebrities, household names? Also, do you think that he will be sentenced to life in prison? I know that's what we're all fingers crossed hoping for. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and while you're there, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another video. This man locked his daughter in the basement for 24 years and forced her to have 7 of his children. It's one of the most notorious kidnappings in history and a crime that truly shocked the world. This man makes me feel ill. Yosef Fritzl and his wife Rosemarie had 7 children, but Yosef always had a very bizarre obsession with his one daughter Elizabeth and began SAing her when she was only 11 years old. Yosef says that he chose Elizabeth because she was the daughter that most resembled his own mother. Like, yuck. His wife, Rosemarie, claims that she had no idea that this abuse was going on, but it is important to note that after they were married for about 10 years, Yosef spent a year in prison for breaking into a woman's home and SAing her at knife point. So this woman definitely knew the man that she was married to. Elizabeth tried multiple times to escape her father's abuse by running away, but since she was a minor, she would always be brought back home by the police, no questions asked. So when Elizabeth turned 18, she was a legal adult now. She planned to move out. She had a job all lined up. She had all the plans set, but her father, Yosef, could not allow this. It was shortly after Elizabeth turned 18, her father, Yosef, asked her help bringing down a heavy door into their basement. For the past 6 years, Yosef told his family that he was redoing the basement so he had a place to work, but what he was really doing was building a secret prison underneath the family home. And the door that he asked Elizabeth to help him bring down would be the door that she would be locked behind for 24 years. Elizabeth was locked down in the basement, no sunlight, no fresh air, nothing to do, no one to talk to. The only person she would see would be her father, Yosef, her captor, when he would come downstairs to bring her small amounts of food and water and to essay her. Elizabeth's mother, Rosemary, and the rest of the family are concerned about where Elizabeth went, so they went and reported her missing. So Joseph forced Elizabeth to write a letter to the family saying that, she ran away, don't look for her. So her case was closed, but she was in the basement. She was in the basement and no one was looking for her. After 5 years of captivity, at the age of 23, Elizabeth gave birth to her first baby all alone, and this would be the first of 7 children she was forced to have with her own father. One of these babies was sadly born very, very sick. Elizabeth begged Joseph to take the baby to the hospital, but he didn't because he thought it would blow his cover. So the baby sadly passed away after only being 3 days old, and then Joseph put its body in the furnace. Joseph did not think there was enough room in the basement for all these babies that Elizabeth was being forced to have, so Joseph allowed Elizabeth to keep her 3 older children. But when she gave birth to the 3 younger children, Joseph stole them from her, you guys, and then he would wrap them up, put them in a basket, and then put them on the front porch step for his wife Rosemary to find. Then Joseph and Rosemary would raise these babies, and Joseph would attach each baby with a little note from Elizabeth, their long-lost daughter, saying that she had this baby, but she was leaving it on the doorstep because she couldn't raise it. So Rosemary was raising 3 of her grandchildren, but they were really the children of her daughter and her husband. And because Joseph is such a sick individual, he would take photos of the 3 children that were allowed to live above ground, doing normal things like swimming in swimming pools, playing in the snow, having birthday parties, and then he would take those photos and show them to the children that were being forced to live underground that had never even seen sunlight in their entire lives, to show them what they were missing out on. And if you're wondering how Rosemary or any of the rest of the family ever found that all these children and missing Elizabeth were living in the basement, well, for one, they were banned from going down there, but he also rigged it so in case anyone ever actually did go down there, they wouldn't find it. So you see there's the stair. These are the stairs from upstairs, downstairs, and this is a utility room, and this is where he would say he would work. And then this red door was hidden behind a bookcase, so no one would see that there was this huge prison where all these people were being held captive. So in 2008, after Elizabeth has been locked up underground for 24 years, she's in her 40s now. Remember, she got locked underground when she was 18. Her oldest child, 19-year-old Kirsten, got seriously sick. Kirsten seriously needed medical attention or she probably wasn't going to survive. So again, Elizabeth begged Joseph to take Kirsten to the hospital, but of course, at first he said absolutely not. But then he changed his mind because he probably realized that if she did die, what would he do with the body? He couldn't just lift out a grown woman's body up the stairs of the basement and no one would see it. And then once he did do that, if he could do that, what would he do with it afterwards? So Joseph did bring her to the hospital. At the hospital, Kirsten was in terrible condition, and the hospital was really suspicious because there was no record of this person existing before she came into the hospital. She had white hair. Her skin was so pale, it was almost translucent. She was 19 years old, but honestly, guys, they were thinking this person was 40 years old because remember, she's never seen sunlight in her entire life. So the hospital actually contacts the police, and the police go there. They're trying to talk to Joseph, but he's not giving anything up. He thinks he's really, really smart, and he thought he had total control and was so smart, in fact, that he went and got Elizabeth, his daughter, that he's had locked up for over 2 decades, and had her come out of the basement for the first time in 24 years to go talk to the police and clear everything up. So the police are now talking to Elizabeth, who also has white hair. She's in her 40s, but she looks 60. Everyone looked 20 years older than they were supposed to. Her skin is also pale as paper, and they're grilling Elizabeth, and she's not giving any answers either, but they're not taking no for an answer. They keep pushing her, and they're pushing Elizabeth until she broke down and finally confessed everything. The police, they go to the house, they find the cellar, they find the other children, and the interesting thing about this is the investigators that were in that cellar for, not that long a time, they were just walking around it, finding these children. They were so traumatized by the sight of this prison that these people were being held captive in that many of them needed therapy after. So just think about these grown men just in this cellar, this basement, this prison for a small amount of time needing therapy. Imagine how messed up everyone else was that was locked in there their entire lives pretty much. Elizabeth was 18 years old when she went down. She was in there for 24 years. She spent more time in that basement than she did out of the basement. Like, I'm 26 years old, being locked in the basement for 24 years, like that's an entire lifetime for most of the people that are probably watching this video right now. So Joseph is obviously arrested, and at first he tried to deny everything. He said that his relationship with his daughter was consensual and that the children liked living in the cellar, but this obviously did not work, and eventually he did plead guilty on all charges and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. He has spent most of his sentence so far in a hospital for the criminally insane, but he was transferred to real prison very recently in May of 2024, where he is now eligible for parole, but I doubt he will get it. But let me know what you think. Elizabeth and her 6 children are living under new identities in a small village somewhere in Austria, and I really, really do hope the best for them. They're living completely out of the public eye. They don't do interviews. I think we should respect whatever wishes they had. I know a lot of people try to show up to that village trying to interview them. That's gross. Leave them alone. They all do need ongoing therapy, which is completely understandable. Also, Elizabeth for a long time held a lot of resentment against her mother, Rosemary, which is also completely understandable. I'm really, really interested to hear from Rosemary though, if she ever does choose to do an interview, which I don't think she would, because I want to know what she thought when all this came to light and realizing that her missing daughter has been underground the entire time by the hands of her own husband. We do know that Elizabeth eventually did forgive her mother, and they apparently have a really, really strong, loving relationship, and I truly do hope the best for all of them. Please let me know all your thoughts on this case in the comments. You guys have been begging me to cover this case for the longest time. While you're in the comments, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next, and until then, I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow. When cheating on your wife ends in murder. He was cheating on his wife with this woman who was cheating on her husband with him, and in the end, 2 of these people ended up dead. And as my Valentine's, you guys should go check out the newest episode of Hot on the Case that is out everywhere right now. Mark and Janaire met when they were only teenagers. Mark was into Janaire right away, but it would be another 4 years until Janaire agreed to go out with him. Mark found Janaire very attractive. She was very exciting. She was cooler than him. Pretty much everyone was in agreement that Janaire was way out of Mark's league. The 2 married in 1993. They did not have any children. They had dogs. Everybody assumed that they were the perfect couple, but by 2017, they were actually fighting a lot, mostly because they were having money troubles. So Mark got a new job in Delaware. Mark and his wife Janaire lived in South Carolina, so they were going to have to move states for Mark's new job. And at first, Janaire stayed in South Carolina for a little bit so she could rent out their house, get everything situated, while Mark went ahead to Delaware to start his new job. And Mark's new boss at his new job in Delaware was this woman named Meredith Chapman. Meredith was 15 years younger than Mark. She's obviously very beautiful, but she was also very successful. She ran for state senate when she was only 32 years old and was honored as one of Delaware's 40 under 40. So a very, very impressive young woman. There was an instant connection between Mark and Meredith. He was absolutely wowed by her. He particularly liked that she praised him and said nice things about him because he said that his wife no longer said nice things about him. Mark actually ended up turning down a better job offer because he wanted to stay and work for Meredith because he had this crush on her. One night, the 2 went out for drinks and they talked and talked for hours. Mark told Meredith that he was falling out of love with his wife Janaire, that things just weren't exciting anymore, things had gotten stale, and that all they did was fight. Meredith was also married to a man named Luke, and she also felt like she was falling out of love with her husband and that the 2 of them were just together out of convenience. And that night, Mark and Meredith shared a kiss, which was the beginning of a full-on affair. And mind you, Mark's wife Janaire is back in South Carolina, about to uproot her entire life and move states for his job, and he's there cheating on her. And by the time that Janaire was even ready to move to Delaware to be with her husband and his mistress were already saying that they were in love with each other. And Janaire instantly knew when she got to Delaware that there was something off, that something was different, that her husband was acting weird and distant, but her husband Mark denied that there was anyone else. Janaire just started doing her own investigation. She put a tracker in her husband's car. She bought a bunch of recording devices. She even hacked into his computer and his phone. And on Valentine's Day, Jenner confronted her husband Mark with proof that he was having an affair with Meredith. And since he was caught, Mark confessed and he told his wife Jenner that he was actually in love with Meredith and he wanted to be with her instead. And Jenner knew that he was cheating, but she did not know that they were like in love with each other. She thought maybe it was just a physical thing. And remember, she has just moved states for him. She has just uprooted her entire life for this man. Could you even imagine the betrayal? Jenner begged Mark to stay and Mark agreed to go to marriage counseling. But before one of their sessions, Mark actually found recording devices that his wife Jenner had sewn into all of his clothing, which really upset Mark. He felt like it was an invasion of privacy. They ended up going to only 3 marriage counseling sessions before Mark decided what he wanted was Meredith and he wanted to divorce Jenner and be with Meredith instead. Meredith actually ended up divorcing her husband. She took a new job in Pennsylvania and moved to Pennsylvania, and the plan was for Mark to divorce Jenner and then follow her to Pennsylvania. Where Meredith moved in Pennsylvania was only a couple-hour drive from where Mark and Jenner lived in Delaware, but I think Jenner was hoping with Meredith out of the state that it would kind of be like an out of sight, out of mind for her husband Mark and that she would be able to win him back. Jenner had assumed because Meredith moved to Pennsylvania that Mark and Meredith were no longer seeing each other, and Jenner actually began to demand that Mark and her do things together. They go on walks together, they go on trips together, they go on nice dinners together while they were proceeding with a divorce. Go on trips, go on walks, do things together, go on dinners while they were in the process of getting divorced. And I think that Jenner was doing this in hopes that Mark would change his mind. And on April 23rd, 2018, Mark and Jenner actually had plans to go on one of these dinners. They had dinner plans, and at this time, their divorce was nearly finalized. Mark was at the restaurant waiting for his soon-to-be ex-wife Jenner to get there when Jenner sent him a text that said that she was actually running late, that she was stuck in traffic. A couple minutes later, she texted him that she was not coming and that he should just go home. And that's because Jenner was never going to that restaurant. She actually drove all the way to Pennsylvania to Meredith's house. Jenner had gone through Meredith's trash can that was outside and sent Mark a photo of Meredith's trash that contained proof that the two of them were still sleeping together. Jenner then texted her husband Mark, "You ruined my life. I hope you never find happiness." And then she sent, "Bye, Mark." After that final text, Jenner and Meredith were no longer answering Mark's phone calls or his text messages, so he got in his car and he drove all the way to Pennsylvania to Meredith's house. And inside of Meredith's home were the bodies of Meredith and Jenner. Both of them were tragically gone. Jenner had shot Meredith and then herself. Jenner had become so obsessed with jealousy and her hatred for Meredith until she just snapped. If she couldn't have Mark, there was no way she was gonna let Meredith have him either. Jenner had begun to stalk Meredith. Meredith's neighbors say that Jenner would be outside of Meredith's house all hours, day and night, in disguises and wigs before this happened. And it's absolutely insane because before any of this happened, Jenner was never violent. She was a very caring, sweet person. This was so unlike her at all. And it's really scary how anyone could just snap like this. This is a very tragic case, and a lot of people put 100% all the blame on Mark and think that he drove Jenner to do this. It's really wild how he had trouble choosing between these two women. He wanted these two women, and in the end, Mark ended up with neither of them. Mark ended up publishing a book about this, which is quite controversial. I didn't read it, but I assume it's just controversial because people really hate Mark, and I think anything he did would have come with some backlash. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about this case. I already know that the comments could potentially get a little bit heated on this one. So let me know all your thoughts in the comments. When you're there, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. Let me know if you've seen the newest episode of Hot in the Case. And until then, I will see you guys next time. This is the case of the identical twins. One was found dead at the bottom of a cliff and the other was arrested for her twins' murder. If you haven't seen it already, the newest episode of my podcast, Hot in the Case, is out right now. There's a video version and an audio version. If you like my videos here, you'll love my videos there, so go check it out. The identical twins in today's story, Allison and Anne, were always very close, but almost too close. They were very codependent. They did everything together. They even showered together. They just could not be apart from each other. People actually said it was like they had one soul separated into two bodies and that they could quite literally read each other's minds. But the codependent relationship between the twins could also be really dark, twisted, and violent. The two would constantly fight, and it would get really physical and violent. The two actually ended up opening their own yoga studio together in Palm Beach, Florida, and it was very successful, which is why they're known as the Yoga Twins. The twins actually got so popular that they were offered their own like yoga twin reality TV show, and they wanted to get like a new, bigger, nicer, and fancier yoga studio for the TV show, but then this TV show actually never ended up happening. So now the twins have this big fancy yoga studio that they couldn't afford. They actually ended up shutting down the yoga studio very abruptly and in a very shady way, without paying their employees for that month or refunding people's memberships for that time period. They were actually so hated in Palm Beach that the twins left town due to the scrutiny and moved to Utah. But there was so much bad publicity like tied to their names. They even had like snark pages made about them on the internet that they ended up changing their names. So now Allison was Alexandra Duvall and Anne was Anastasia Duvall. In Utah, the twins tried to open up another yoga studio, but that one flopped and it went under very quickly. They were in so much debt, they had to file for bankruptcy, and they were under so much stress that both twins developed like a drinking problem. They started drinking a lot. Now they're adding a bunch of alcohol into an already toxic, violent, codependent relationship between the two twins. Alexandra actually got a DUI in Utah. She posted bail and then fled the state. The twins decided to move to Hawaii. On May 29th, 2016, Anastasia had planned a camping trip with her new boyfriend named Federico, and her twin sister Alexandra kind of decided to like invite herself and tag along on their like couple camping trip last minute. And Federico was actually trying to help his girlfriend Anastasia like stop drinking, so this was actually like an alcohol-free camping trip, but Alexandra snuck some in. They actually weren't even at the camping spot for very long. Federico left for a second, turned around, and realized that the twins were gone and they had taken his car. The twins were actually driving on the very notorious highway, the road to Hana, which is a very beautiful road, but it's actually quite dangerous because it's very like twisty, turny, narrow, and on the side of a cliff. People driving around next to them saw the twins fighting in the car, punching each other, pulling each other's hair, and slapping each other. And they're doing this while driving on this super dangerous road. And then those witnesses saw the car take a sharp turn left and accelerate off the side of the cliff. Alexandra, who was driving, walked away with only like minor injuries. She survived, but her twin sister Anastasia was tragically dead at the scene. So the police are trying to figure out what happened here. They have all these witnesses saying that they saw the twins fighting in the car, and then the car just suddenly drove off the cliff. And then they realized that there's a bunch of like tire marks, like skid marks on the road that were consistent with someone accelerating off of the cliff. There were no signs that they tried to brake or slow down or anything. And Alexandra was showing no emotion, even though she just drove off a cliff and her twin sister was dead. Alexandra, who was the one to drive off the cliff, had a blood alcohol level of 3 times the legal limit at the time of the crash, so clearly very intoxicated. Was this a drunk driving accident or a murder? Did she purposefully try to drive off that cliff to kill her sister? Anastasia's boyfriend Federico, who was actually on that camping trip with the twins, said that he didn't seem shocked that something like this happened. He said that him and Anastasia were trying to actually like plan their own life together, separate from Alexandra. Anastasia wanted to quit drinking, move away, and start a life and a business with Federico, and this made Alexandra furious. That the week before the crash, Federico said that he heard Alexandra say that she wanted to kill her sister. And this is really weird, but before the crash ever even happened, Alexandra would tell people, "I killed my sister," like it already happened. Federico also said that after his girlfriend Anastasia died, her twin sister Alexandra started to wear her clothes. She tried to come on to him and even tried to get in the shower with him, like she was trying to take over Anastasia's life. The twins' own father actually said that it should have been the other twin, that the wrong twin died. And like almost immediately after the crash, Alexandra was arrested for another DUI. She was like swerving on the road and almost hit a bunch of pedestrians, and once again she was over 3 times the legal limit. And this is right after she was in this terrible, traumatic car accident where her sister died. Eventually, Alexandra was arrested for the second-degree murder of her sister, and her defense actually tried to argue that Anastasia, the sister that passed away in the crash, was actually the one that caused the crash because she was fighting with her sister who was driving and pulling at her hair, and that's what caused her to drive off the cliff. The judge actually ended up finding that there wasn't enough evidence to convict Alexandra beyond a reasonable doubt, so he found her not guilty and released her. I'm sorry, she was 3 times the legal limit. We couldn't even have convicted her of like vehicular manslaughter. Well, Alexandra Duvall is out free right now, and there's a lot of people that think that she got away with the murder of her twin sister, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Do you think she got away with murder? Do you think that she was also attempting to try and take both of their lives when she drove off that cliff? Or do you think it just was a terrible, terrible accident? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time in my next video. This teacher essayed a 14-year-old student but was determined too pretty to go to prison. Deborah LaFave always wanted to be a teacher and got her dream job in 2002 as a middle school English teacher in the Tampa area. After her first year of teaching, Deborah met Owen, and the two were married only 8 months later. But less than 1 year after tying the knot, Owen got suspicious that his new bride was being unfaithful. He thought that she was having an affair with another teacher, and Deborah was sleeping with someone at school. But I doubt Owen could ever imagine that that would be a 14-year-old student. At the start of the 2003-2004 school year, Deborah started dressing really inappropriately for a middle school teacher, you know, like short skirts and low-cut tight tops, and she started getting a lot of attention from the middle school boys that she was teaching. And you know, Deborah did not want to be an authority figure despite going into a career of teaching. She wanted to be friends with her students, you know, like one of their peers. But Deborah would still refer to her male students as little boys when talking to her husband or her friends, so it's like she knows that they're children, which makes what Deborah did next so disturbing. Deborah's victim's identity has been protected, so we're just gonna refer to him as Jay. Jay has been described as like a popular jock type. You know, he was athletic and funny, but he's also been described as very immature because, you know, he's 14 in middle school, not even in high school yet. When Jay met Deborah, Mrs. LaFave, he had just turned 14, and you know, he thought that she was really attractive, so he would flirt with her, and Deborah liked the attention, so she didn't tell him to stop. The two got particularly close on a school field trip that Deborah was chaperoning. And for the rest of the school year, Deborah was pretty much by the book grooming this child. She was always trying to get him alone in her classroom, even though he wasn't one of the students in her class. She would offer him ride homes and also buy him gifts. And Jay began bragging to his 13 and 14-year-old friends that he was going to sleep with Mrs. LaFave. On the last day of the school year, Deborah gave Jay detention so they could have alone time in her classroom. During detention, Deborah told Jay that she was thinking of him, that she had feelings for him. She lifted up her shirt and then kissed him. Jay went home and called his 15-year-old cousin, that we're just gonna call cousin for this video, and he told cousin that a hot teacher liked him, but cousin didn't really believe Jay, so Jay was gonna prove it to him. During that summer break, 24-year-old Deborah, 14-year-old Jay, and 15-year-old cousin would hang out while Deborah's husband was at work. Deborah started dressing like a teenager, using a baby voice, and would even put her hair in pigtails, and she told Jay that the forbidden, inappropriate nature of their relationship was a turn-on. In early June, Deborah picked up Jay and cousin for the first time and brought them back to her place, where she took Jay into the bedroom that she shared with her husband and performed an act on him. Then on the drive home, she instructed cousin to take over the driving even though he was 15 and didn't have a driver's license, so she could do another act on Jay in the back seat. A few days later, Deborah told Jay to meet her at her classroom, even though they had no business being there because school had ended 2 weeks prior. But Deborah wanted a private place for them to go all the way. And this was Jay's first time ever, and Deborah would statutory S him 3 times in 4 days. The next time was when Jay's 15-year-old cousin was illegally driving Deborah's car once again, and Jay and Deborah were in the back seat, and 15-year-old cousin was watching it through the rearview mirror. And then the last time was once again in Deborah's car when they were parked at a playground while cousin was waiting outside the car. This all came to light when a friend of cousin's mom saw him out with an older, provocatively dressed woman. And cousin's mom confronted cousin about this, but of course he lied. But then that same night, his mother overheard him on the phone with a friend saying that his cousin was sleeping with a hot teacher. Cousin's mom called her sister, which was Jay's mom, and Jay just admitted everything, so his mom called the police. Police had Jay call Deborah so she would incriminate herself over the phone call while they recorded it. On the phone call, Jay said that he was nervous because they hadn't used protection the 3 times that they hooked up, but Deborah said it was okay, you don't have to use protection. And then Jay asked if they wanted to meet up again so they could hook up, and Deborah said yes. But when Deborah showed up to hook up with this middle school boy once again for the 4th time, the police were already waiting for her and they arrested her, and she was facing 15 years in prison. And very quickly this made international news because at the time this kind of thing was still pretty unheard of, and Deborah was seen as so beautiful, so this was a huge scandal. Something very controversial that happened after Deborah was arrested was some male officers actually forced her to take off all of her clothing so they could photograph literally every single inch of her body as evidence so they could match it up with the way that Jay described her body. And I personally have never heard of something like this. You have to let me know if you've heard of this in any kind of case before. But Deborah actually went on to say that this incident felt like she was the actual victim of SA. And very famously, during court, Deborah's defense attorney said to the judge that she was too pretty to go to prison. And although she was facing 15 years in prison, Deborah walked away with no jail time. Yeah, you heard that right. She was sentenced to 3 years of house arrest and 7 years of probation, but she ended up getting early release on house arrest and probation. And Deborah's husband, Owen, did stick by her for a while, but eventually did file for divorce. And this is gonna sound pretty bad, but I actually have little sympathy for Owen. He ended up cashing out on a book he wrote about the situation that he called Gorgeous Disaster, the tragic story of Deborah LaFave, where he really paints Deborah as the victim and really dismisses all the trauma of the actual victim, a 14-year-old, because I cannot stress this enough. It does not matter the gender of a victim. It's a 14-year-old. If you're watching this and you don't see Deborah as a predator, I cannot stress this enough, you are part of the problem, because I don't care if you're a boy and this was your dream when you were in middle school, in high school. If you're an adult now and you don't have a problem with a grown person being attracted to someone in middle school, then you're just a creep. And to this day, Deborah has pretty much stayed out of the limelight, even though she was a household name and kind of seen as a celebrity for a while. She thinks of herself as a good person. She is a Christian now, she remarried, she's a mother now, but to this day has never shown any remorse for what she did. And if you watched the end of this video, appreciate you guys so much. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever even heard of this case before? I'm sure some of my older audience definitely has heard of this before. And while you're in the comments, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. Until then, love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video.